Hello everyone, my name is Sally, and I am here to tell you all the story of the Nightmare Before Christmas. Now, I'm sure that you are all very familiar with this story, but this time of year always makes me so nostalgic for that legendary Halloween. There are parts of this tale that I was not there for, but my husband Jack has recounted the story hundreds of times. I can recall it in my sleep at this point. So, without further ado, here is the story of the Nightmare Before Christmas. It was Halloween 1993. Halloween is always the biggest day of the year for us. We have a huge celebration in town center. All of our residents participate. There is singing and dancing, and Jack always puts on a spectacularly terrifying performance. That year, he even lit himself on fire. I mean, how much more committed to the part could you be? Jack is really extraordinary. He's our hometown hero. Everyone loves him, especially the witches. They are always swooning over him. Before I go any further, I should tell you a little bit about myself. I was created by a man named Dr. Finkelstein. He liked to keep me locked away in his observatory, and I had to come up with some clever ways to sneak out and join the festivities. Luckily, I was able to see the entire performance before Dr. Fink found me hiding behind a tree. He tried dragging me back home, but I wasn't ready, so I simply unattached my arm and ran away. Anyway, that year's performance was one for the books. Jack even said it was our most horrible yet. But little did we know, our Pumpkin King was troubled. Jack left the celebration early, feeling like he needed to do some soul searching. He and Zero went to Spiral Hill. Speaking of Zero, he should be around here somewhere. Zero. Zero. Oh, there you are, my sweet boy. How are you? I love you very much. Okay, go play now. Anyway, I'm not proud to admit this, but I did follow him there. In my defense, I needed to stock up on some deadly nightshade from the cemetery. Jack was lamenting about how year after year it's the same routine, and yeah, he's the Pumpkin King, but shouldn't there be more to life? I had no idea he was feeling this way, and I could relate. I'm forced to stay in the observatory by my creator when I know there's so much more out there, a whole world I haven't experienced. So I had to go back home. I needed my arm, and Dr. Fink was not happy with me. I mean, I did poison him 3 times that month, but still, can you blame me? I tried talking with him while he was sewing my arm back on. I told him that I'm restless and that he could just make another creation. He would always tell me it was just a phase. The next day, I was preparing Doctor's lunch, and suddenly the town's emergency alarms went off. Jack never returned home the night before, and the whole town was looking for him. I knew I needed to get out there and help. Luckily, I had just restocked my deadly nightshade. Here's a little tip. Frog's breath overpowers any odor. It can be a little bit bitter though, so add in some wormswort to combat the bitterness. Dr. Fink was pretty suspicious of the soup that I had prepared him, but eventually I was able to get him to eat and he was out cold. By that time, thankfully, Jack had returned home and called for a town meeting. Jack had apparently wandered the hinterlands all night and came upon a place he had never been. There were several trees with curious-looking doors on them. To this day, he still doesn't know what made him choose that specific door, but that is how Jack stumbled upon Christmas Town. He told us all about it during the town meeting. He was so passionate. He wanted to bring Christmas to Halloween Town. It was unlike Halloween in every way. It was alive and warm and jolly. He told us about presents and stockings and someone called Santa Claus. Now that is what really sold the crowd. We like to have a good laugh at the fact that we thought his name was Santa Claus. How silly were we? After the meeting, Dr. Fink was furious with me, and he locked me away in the tower. The doorbell rang, and I almost couldn't believe my ears when I heard Jack Skellington's voice in my house. He had come to borrow some equipment from Dr. Fink. He was spending all of his time researching Christmas. He just couldn't quite understand it, but he was determined to crack the Christmas code. That night, I packed up some treats, lowered them to the ground, and threw myself out the window. I did have to sew all my limbs back on, but I had become quite efficient at sewing, and I was not going to stay locked up in that tower forever. I arrived at Jack's and hooked up the basket to his pulley. He opened the window and waved at me. My heart nearly came out of my bottom at that point, and I took off. I was so nervous. Jack would later tell me that he was really happy to see me and wanted to invite me up, but when he came back to the window, I was gone. I sat outside of his gate and started playing He Loves Me Not on a dead flower, and right before my eyes, it turned into the most beautiful little Christmas tree. But within seconds, it burst into flames. I couldn't believe it. I knew then and there that Christmas was a terrible idea. I ended up falling asleep outside of Jack's gate that night. I know, what can I say? I wasn't thinking straight. Jack had an epiphany that morning. He wanted to take over Christmas. We joke about it now that he must have been losing his mind from lack of sleep, but you know what they say, hindsight is 20/20. At this point, I knew this was a terrible idea. The mayor had called us all down to start getting our Christmas assignments, and I had to dodge Dr. Fink, who had finally realized that I had escaped, and he was furious. Jack gave each resident a special job, even lock, shock, and barrel. He wanted them to kidnapped Santa Claus. Now again, looking back, Jack realizes this was a terrible mistake. They were always running around doing Oogie Boogie's bidding. He should have never trusted them, and he does not condone kidnapping. Jack's judgment was just so clouded from his Christmas spirit. He says it's his biggest regret to this day. Jack tells me that he needs my help more than anyone. I tried telling him about my vision, but he wasn't having any of it. He was convinced we were going to have a holly jolly Christmas. He told me he needed me to make his Santa outfit. I tried telling him it was going to be a disaster, but he just wouldn't listen. So now the whole town is working on making Christmas happen. We had the best intentions, but we were doing it all wrong. The toys were all terrifying. No human child would want these. Who wants a hat made out of a dead bat? Still, Jack was ecstatic. Christmas was just one day away. I went to Jack's house to do the final touches on his fitting. I tried telling him again how wrong this felt. I even reminded him that he's the Pumpkin King. Lock, Shock, and Barrel show up with Santa Claus, and he was a lot less scary than I was expecting. Jack told him not to worry about Christmas this year and sent him off with those 3 little a-holes who, unbeknownst to us, took him straight to Oogie Boogie's lair. I'm sorry, I know I shouldn't call them names, but they almost got us all killed. Time was running out. I knew I had to do something to stop Christmas. I devised a plan. I snuck back home and grabbed a bottle of fog juice I had hidden under my floorboard. Luckily, Doctor was too busy making his new creation to notice me. Right before Jack was set to take off, I poured the entire bottle of fog juice into the fountain. The fog became thicker than jellied brains. There was no way Jack could safely fly through that. Or so I thought. Jack was devastated. I admit, it really did hurt to see him that distraught, but I was just looking out for him. My plan completely fell through when Zero showed up, his pumpkin nose shining bright through the fog. Jack realized that Zero could lead the reindeer, and Christmas was back on. Before I could say anything, he took off into the night. I was overcome with fear and despair. I thought I'd never see him again. Jack begins his journey delivering macabre toys to all the suburban boys and girls. It doesn't take long before things completely fall apart. People started calling the police because the toys and decorations were attacking. Everyone in town is watching this whole thing unfold in the cauldron, and it was like watching my worst fears come true. Everyone was cheering, but they didn't understand what was going on. The military was going after Jack. I knew I needed to find Santa. He could help Jack. I get to Oogie's and I tear one of my legs off. I used it to distract the gross sack of bugs so I could get to Santa. My plan failed again. Listen, I was trying my best, working with what I had, but Oogie caught us before I could get Santa out of there. While Santa and I were fighting for our lives, Jack was shot down. The whole town thought he was dead. Jack wakes up in a cemetery. He was crushed. He felt like a failure. He just wanted to spread cheer. But Jack, ever the performer, realized he finally felt alive again. The Pumpkin King was back, but he knew he had to right a few wrongs, and quick. Oogie had Santa and I tied up. We were moments away from being dropped into a pit of lava when I heard it. The mayor's announcement that Jack had been blown to smithereens. I'm sorry, it's just so hard to relive this part. Give me one moment. Okay, I'm back. I'm okay. Oogie likes to play these sick, twisted games with his victims. Ironically, this ended up saving our lives. Jack arrived in the nick of time. Jack is the only thing that Oogie is afraid of. Santa and I looked on in horror as Jack unraveled Oogie at the seams. Reduced to a pile of bugs, one by one they fell into the pit of lava. One bug survived, but it was quickly exterminated by Santa, and Oogie Boogie was no more. Jack offered a sincere apology to Santa, and rightfully he told Jack off. Santa said if Jack ever wants to take over someone else's holiday, he should listen to me, because I'm the only one that makes any sense around this insane asylum. I still brag about that to this day. Jack and I were about to have a moment outside of Oogie's lair when the mayor and Lock, Shock, and Barrel show up. They drive us back into town, and everyone is thrilled to see that Jack is in fact alive. Of course, Santa was able to make everything right and save Christmas, and he even made time to fly over Halloween Town and bring something I've never seen before: snow. It was so weird and cold. Everything was so overwhelming. I had to sneak away. I went up to Spiral Hill. Who should show up there but my dearest Jack? We sang each other the sweetest song and shared our first kiss. Jack and I would go on to get married on that very hill, and we are living happily ever after as Pumpkin King and Queen, though I'm still getting used to the title. We still get a Christmas card from Santa every year. He's definitely forgiven Jack, and even brought Mrs. Claus and a couple of elves to many Halloween celebrations over the years. We still celebrate Christmas too, but we keep it in our world. I hope you enjoyed me telling my story. It's my favorite to tell, and I figured, what better time than the beginning of spooky season? I hope you all have the best Halloween and the merriest Christmas. Good night.